So we have understood the importance of constructor. We have also seen what happens when we declare a method or define a method below the constructor, and what made that constructor to be very powerful when we declare some arguments default within the constructor, right? Now let's understand about the types of methods, starting with instance method, because we have already seen a method below the constructor is generally called as instance method. Because see, when you go for instance methods, these are the methods which act upon the instance variables. Because suppose if we take the example of student class, which we have declared previously, name, age, marks, and obviously the first parameter itself is self, which is trying to store the address. Right now, what we try to do is we'll try to take the same program which we have taken previously, but let's add one more method. And what happens, what makes instance methods differ with the constructor, and how do we try to differentiate it? Because generally instance variables are directly available to the instance. Okay, so now enough of talking, we'll just go for our execution point. So I'll continue with the previous shell which we have done, right? So we have taken this program. Let's try to continue the same program, but I'll just try to make it some more dynamic, where we'll add some more method. Because generally when we try to go for these instance methods, they act upon the instance variables itself. Something like if we take here name, age, marks, those are instance variables. Whatever you give here, n, age, marks, but make sure whatever the objects or variables you pass in the constructor, just try to pass the same thing, because your methods below the constructor, never ever worry about them in their arguments. Only you should pass them when you pass with a print or modify those values. That's where instance variables are available, where we need to know the memory of that instance. That's where this self plays a very vital role. You can also see if you remove self, what happens? You can clearly throw an error. That's where we have seen difference between object creation and object initialization, which plays a very vital role. Now let's try to write the same program with instance method to process the data of several students. So let's continue the same program to process the student data of several students. That's where we try to define instance methods using a student class, where using a student class and with instance methods. Because always remember the word instance. What do you mean by instance? You are taking it that moment, but obviously you are taking it from the constructor only. So instead of copy pasting it, let's try to make it more initialized, because I'll write some more comments. Instance methods, these are the instance methods to process the data of the objects, So you can name the same name or you can give your own name, it's up to you. I'll give my class as student, where in this particular program I'll be trying to make you understand whatever we have learned till now. We have understood about control statements and assignment operators, comparison. Let's try to include all of them, because we are trying to process the data of several students. Something like you are taking their grades, right? That's where I'm giving you a hint, where we write one more method. So obviously you will write a constructor here, because that's where dunder in it. So you just give define. So many people will give single underscore, but be very careful, give double underscore. This double underscore, which are special methods, language special methods in Python. So here the first argument is self. If you don't want to give self, you can write your name, but generally see, whenever you give dot, automatically it will try to throw you some arguments over there. See, just don't worry about them, they come by default. So here I try to give my name as default. If you try to give your name as default, it's fine, give your name as default. I'm trying to give my name as default, or else let's make it simple. Let's come up with space, n is equal to space, age is equal to, I also want to get their age is equal to, minimum age is 20 years I gave, and marks is equal to, let's try to give some minimum marks like 0 only. Why should we give any other marks, right? So let's give self dot name is equal to n, and self dot age is equal to age, whatever you have declared. Self dot marks is equal to marks, right? Self dot marks is equal to marks. Now let's try to declare the method. This is generally called as instance method. So this is an instance method because that's where we are trying to make sure we declare those methods which are bound to the instances of the objects which we have declared above. What are they? Name, age, marks. So this is an instance method. So we define. Let's try to give what I want to give is I want to display the result first, whatever we have defined in the above. So define display of the same program, but we are making it bit different. So define display of, I want to first display the names of the persons. What I give? Hi. I'll just give some space here. Instead of taking myself, I give self dot name. So automatically whatever we throw, the values will be printed here. Print your ages, or let me take your ages, whatever. Print, don't worry about print, it's up to you what you try to give. So self dot age, and another print for your marks are. I'm not just satisfying with it, but what I want is, by taking my marks, by taking student marks, I want to specifically calculate the grades. That's where you are taking one more method. So to calculate grades based on marks. Okay, to calculate grades based on marks. So for that reason, what do? Simple, you define one more method. That method is calculate. Okay, but how does the address is being called? Only with self. Whatever you declare here, the first argument or the first object or attribute, whatever you convey, so make sure you pass the same, because with that only the address is being fetched to different methods. Never ever miss that point. So obviously, how do you just go ahead? Because you are generally declared a display method to see the result. When you call this, when you initialize the class, you can get, when you give a dot display, you get whatever the, if you don't pass the arguments, you get hi space, your age is 20, your marks as 0. That's what you get actually. If you want to just see, I'll prove it. So save and you execute this. Just define a is equal to student. You are declaring the object. When you give a dot display, what do you get? You get hi space, your age is 20, your marks are 0, because I gave space here. That's the reason you can't see anything over there, right? Or you give dot, it will be easy for you, right? So a is equal to student, just make it simple. Yeah, a is equal to student and a dot display. Then you can clearly see you get hi, you just get hi dot, your age is 20, your marks are 0. That's what we gave directly in dot. But I want to calculate grades. That is the reason I am declaring one more method. But how do you calculate grade? Based on marks, right? Obviously. Then you are trying to keep up a condition. You need to. So we are defining our conditional statements here. Obviously, how do you define? If self dot marks are greater than equal to 600. I am keeping 600 as a limit. So based on that, I can give him print you got first grade. That's what my print is. If you wanted to continue any other statement, just go beside that, below that. But I wanted to give one more check case for the user by writing elif. You know, right? If, elif, else. That's what we use again. If self dot marks greater than equal to 600. Now I am going for the else if condition, where I try to give greater than equal to 400. What I want to give is print you got second grade. You can customize your print, it's up to you. Then based on that result only, when you call this calculate method, you can see the result. And finally, I'll close the condition. If you want, you can just extend the condition. It's up to user interest. So if it is less than 400, I can say you are failed. Okay, that's it. So save. And now, before creating instances, what I would like to do is, first let me show you what happens when we call this, or when we initialize the class, when we call this class calculate method. So when we execute this, I'll just give a is equal to student, right? I just go for a dot display. Obviously, you get the details. Hi dot, your age is 20, your marks are 0. But when you call the calculate method only, you see, you can see the calculate method here. You based on mark 0, sorry, you're failed. That's it, you got your result. Now, let's try to customize it because I want to think in from multiple user point of view. So, at that time, I try to create instances. With some data. So, create instances with some data from user input, that is by entering keyboard only. So, I take multiple inputs. I want to take n is equal to int of input of, I want to take only number of students, right? So, how many students you want to give? So, based on number of students only, let's try to take the input, number of students. That's it. But how do you tackle this data? Because you don't know, this is not a sequence. You're only relying on the condition. There you go for writing the control statement by using while keyword. So, while is depending only on the test condition, right? Yes. So, initialize the object here, I is equal to 0. Then go for it. While, what is your test condition? Obviously, I is less than n. There you go. Because you are taking input from user, make it customized. Your name should be only string, age should be only integer, marks can be float, or it's up to user interest, right? It's up to user interest. So, let me make n is name is equal to input of enter student name. That is the reason I told you we'll be using everything in this particular program, because I want to take name is equal to, instead of taking n, that's what I gave, right? So, name is equal to n or anything, whatever you gave, it's fine. So, while I less than n, name equal to input of enter student, and marks is equal to, sorry, before we need to give age, right? So, age is equal to input of, not direct input of, you want to take it as integer, right? So, int of input of enter age, and finally I want to take marks. It's up to you whether you want to take marks as float or integer. I am trying to take only integer input. I just restrict user, enter marks. Okay. Now, how does this can be happen? Only when you initialize the class with an object. That's where you define here. So, create student class instance and store the data. That's where you need to give s is equal to student of, what are they? How do you try to take it? You should take name, age and marks, because that's what you have defined. Name, age, marks. There you go. Now, what happens when you give s dot display? The details will be displayed over there, and when you give s dot calculate, that's it. Let me execute this. Because I'm missing one step, I'll try to display it, I'll try to convey it one way when I execute it. It will ask for the input first, number of students 2. Okay, I gave student name Saket, age is 25, marks are 852. Okay, hi Saket, your age is 25, marks are 852, you got first grade. Very good. Another name is Raju, enter age is 21, marks is 586, you got second grade. Okay, 2 students, why I'm entering into another condition? Because you are not initializing your while loop by a test condition. Even though you gave I less than n, where is your assignment operator, right? Your addition assignment, because I is not incrementing here, I is only 0, 0 less than 2, every time 0 is less than 2, you should increment I value. That's where you give I plus is equal to 1, that is addition assignment, because we have already learnt about each one of them. Addition assignment, there you go. So, I want to make my print every time with some highlight decoration by giving dash. Save, there you go. Now, enter the same result, enter number of students 2, student name is Saket, age is 27, marks are 900. Wow, you got your display and your method, you got first grade. The second student is Raju, age is 25, marks are 852, again same first grade. The best thing is your statement, your program is successfully ended, because you have used your addition increment and it clearly ended directly. That is where if you even directly see the directory of the object, because you are directly giving the number of students, it automatically asks you for the result because you're already creating an object here. Even if you want to see the directory, just make sure you give print of directory, not here, just make it below it. If any time you want to see what are the object, what are the methods available within it, just go for it. Number of students are only one, student name is Saket, age is 25, marks are 586. See, you got here available methods along with the objects and your final result. So it depends on user interest, how do you try to see the result. So here clearly we have used our addition assignment, and we have also seen our methods, and we have seen our control statement, everything along with the condition. So simple, we have given the instance method here display, and we are taking another method like calculate to evaluate the grades. That is about the instance methods. Always remember, instance methods require self as the input parameter to access the data which we have defined in the constructor. The first argument is always self, where whatever the argument you have taken in the constructor, that should be same passed in order to access the memory address. So this is how whatever we have learned, we have included. You can customize this program in any way. So always remember, if you are good at writing function, then everything is done. See here, we have included conditions and while loop and taking input from user, assignment operator, addition assignment, everything, right? So that is how instant methods are widely used with the help of the constructor, where we are trying to directly initialize the variables. If you don't want to have this default, even if you don't give anything, obviously you get dot 20 marks. You can just try it on your own, you will be easily satisfied. That's what we have done. So make sure you practice it, and it will be very much easier once you get the logic of class and object.